Our first task in our lesson plan would be a do now activity that establishes collaboration and community. Students would get into pairs and discuss what they already know about the concept. After their quick discussion, the teacher would then use a PowerPoint presentation to supply the students with background knowledge to what the concept of human rights is. This would include any keywords and language that is related to the topic. There would then be a YouTube clip played called A Short History of Human Rights. Students would watch and then be split into groups and assigned a time period to investigate and research. There would be questions that students would have to answer in their presentation, and that the requirement would be they present back to the class in a presentation style format. This could be a PowerPoint or a poster. Each student becomes an expert in their field or time period, and the teacher would circle the class and offer help wherever possible. This directly relates to concept 2 of representation, as students have options provided for their perception. Once all students had presented, they would go back into their peers and discuss how they think the concept of human rights has affected us today. This would lead us into the next lesson and promote self-reflection and assessment, hopefully stimulate enthusiasm, as they can see how this concept they are learning about directly relates to them. As you will hear through our lesson plans, an important part of UDL is that students have the opportunity to engage in the classroom, with the teacher providing various different ways for students to express themselves. As teachers, we must provide different ways of representation so students can learn and understand the concepts and ideas within our classrooms.
So today I will be talking about UDL, and specifically this is a Year 10 Human Rights class, and this is a short lesson example of how to facilitate UDL in the classroom. This lesson will be on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So to start off with, we'll do a starter of about 10 minutes, and the purpose for this will be identifying prior knowledge, and students will be given a handout with the terms historical and modern human rights breaches. The handout will include some examples that need to be put into the correct categories. This activity will be done in pairs, and for UDL relevance, this will be for collaboration and communication and to activate background knowledge. This directly applies to principles 1 and 3. Next, we will go on to a teacher-led discussion of about 10 minutes for the purpose of introducing the Declaration of Human Rights. The teacher will hand out paper copies of the Declaration, as well as providing a digital copy that students can access if they prefer. The teacher will discuss key elements of the Declaration, the layout, and other concepts associated with its formation and relevance. The expectation is that students will be active participants in this section and meaningful discussions will take place. The UDL relevance for this area will be a variety of teaching and learning strategies, and this directly applies to Principle 1. Next, we will move on to a declaration group research activity. This will take about 25 minutes or to the end of the lesson. The purpose will be to have a closer look at the declaration, and students will get into groups of 3 or 4 and will each be given 4 articles to examine further and become experts at. They will research these articles further and look for examples that may have led to their inclusion. They will use this to create a presentation of their choosing, be it a PowerPoint or a poster or something like that, that outlines their articles and examples surrounding them. The UDL relevance for this will be collaboration and communication, options for completing work, alternatives, skills and knowledge, and personal interest. This directly applies to all 3 principles. So to remember for UDL, we need to make sure we offer a variety of ways to enhance learning for all students. Multiple strategies mean students are constantly offered a good range to combat boredom or complacency, and UDL is applicable to much of our learning through this course. We've often been implementing it without knowing it, and it has become a focal point of modern education.
Teachers of social sciences have many diverse options when it comes to deciding on what to teach, how to teach, and the topic of human rights provides us with many options. Social studies is a broad subject and has excellent UDL potential. This is backed up by the best evidence synthesis and the curriculum, which provides an excellent basis for giving teachers a permissive framework about how to proceed. Teachers are allowed to become innovators. So, for example, in terms of human rights, this will be framed as an inquiry question and becomes the basis of lesson planning and pedagogical approaches. For example, in what ways are people denied human rights today? Firstly, providing alternatives for accessing information for our students. This acknowledges the visual, auditory and kinesthetic nature of how they think and learn. Learning activities no longer need to be linear or one-dimensional. For example, if the topic is on child soldiers in Sierra Leone, there are many ways for students to build conceptual understanding around this topic, and lots of information is out there. For example, websites, magazines, books, radio interviews, TV shows, and movies are all rich sources of information. Secondly, providing options for responding. For example, keyboard instead of pen to complete a writing assignment. Providing options for completing assignments using different media, text, speech, film, music. For example, looking at slavery in the 1800s, students can look at the experience of people who have no human rights. This allows different perspectives to be looked at, and also a contrast to modern day versions of slavery, such as child labour or child soldiers. 3, providing options that increase the relevance and authenticity of instructional activities. For example, a guest speaker, a migrant representative, or an aid worker. Number 4, provide options that encourage collaboration and communication. For example, peer tutoring or activities such as Think, Pair, Share. It may not be reasonable or possible for teachers to incorporate all 3 of the UDL principles into every lesson plan. Rather, they are intended to guide instruction over time. The point is that students are offered multiple ways to achieve the level of understanding that will advance their learning. UDL also acknowledges the surprising level of diversity in our classrooms. UDL also enables teachers to demonstrate a commitment to the Treaty of Waitangi principles of protection, partnership, and participation.
This lesson on the Treaty of Waitangi in relation to human rights is an example of how the UDL can be used in lesson planning. To start off with, I'm going to pose the question of what do you know already about the Treaty of Waitangi? This will be on a 2-minute timer on the whiteboard. This will create enthusiasm, put pressure on the students due to the time restriction, but also assess students' prior learning. From there, we'll move into a peer share. This will enact engagement, community, collaboration through sharing perspectives and building knowledge through the discussion portion of the task. Then we'll define the learning intentions. This will be using a must, should, could model, which is modelled off Bloom's to create higher order thinking. This creates differentiation in the class, which offers support to all students so they can learn to the best of their abilities. Now into the learning portion. To start off with, there'll be a YouTube clip on the treaty, and then I will discuss some of the big ideas. This will create engagement and to sustain learning through the different forms of media and kind of chunking the lesson. From collecting all of this information, students will now be able to move into the group task portion. They'll be in groups of 3 to 4, and in this group work, students will explore human rights and the Treaty of Waitangi through their knowledge that they've developed in previous lessons and the information they've learnt today. The goal of this task is to discover through the 2 questions posed. First question is, does the Treaty of Waitangi, the articles, comply to human rights? And was the way the treaty was acted on comply with human rights? Students will research using the resources they've collected in previous lessons, new resources that I provided them in this lesson, and through their access online, so websites like Te Ara and New Zealand History. The UDL connection is collaboration, and I will circle around the room providing support when needed. Through this, the questions will be answered in a compare and contrast model looking at both perspectives. This could be presented in a Venn diagram or a list. Presentation, it can be on any media of students' choice, which provides representation for different ways of learning. This example of UDL can be used in the classroom, and all these ideas will be continued in the following lesson.